Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Angel Solid Belen, and today we're joined by David Tracy. Hello, David. How's it going?
Howdy. Glad to be here.
Yes, sir.
I'm pumped.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here. David, I think we want to go ahead and open up with what are you currently doing in the automotive world, whether that's professional or in your personal life? Explain to us how you got to that point.
Yeah, I run a website called the Autopian. It's a car culture website for people who just love cars. It's oftentimes people ask, okay, what do you write about? And I always answer just anything car related. And they're like, just news? Do you do review? It's everything. Anything a car enthusiast would be into, it's on the Autopian. Actually, right now I'm a little bit flustered because right before this interview, I was editing a kind of a takedown piece that we're writing. It's pretty contentious because CNN. Someone on CNN wrote an anti-manual transmission article. It basically said like manual transmissions are for macho men and that we should all drive electric cars. We can't let that stand. Not at the Autopian. Whoa. We're taking it down. We're going for it.
Yeah, no, I mean I'm gonna have to disagree 100% because the the person who taught me manual transmission was my mother.
Yes, my mom, she's German. She drives stick way better than my dad.
Yeah.
My dad stalls all the time.
Stalls everywhere.
It's total BS, this idea that like it's just macho men who want manual transmissions to be a thing. My mom loves them.
Yeah. So I have an old 2001 E46 manual transmission, right?
Very cool. Okay.
The person who loves it the most. No, I'm not trying to. She's wonderful. Her name is Dorothy.
Oh.
My car. No, my mom loves to drive the car just because of the manual transmission. She loves to be able to feel the shift, push in the clutch, and do it cleanly. So I'm glad that you're attacking that because
also like the article sort of makes it out like manual transmissions are a terrible thing. They're less efficient than automatics. First off, there are very few manual transmissions even out there, like 1%, 1.5%, or whatever it is. They're fine. Like that is not. Go fight another battle. Like that's not the one to bother with.
Yeah, that's not the one. That's not the one.
But I get it. You got to write a contentious article. You got to get the clicks. But we're coming after you.
So your website is the Autopian.
Boom, killed it.
Okay, and you have other background in the automotive world aside from your website.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that a little bit?
So I'm a co-founder. Jason Torchinsky is one of the other three founders, and then Bo Bachman, who runs Galpin.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Which is a large dealership franchise in the Valley.
Yep.
We have publisher Matt Hardigree, who has a extensive background, and Mercedes Streeter and Thomas Hundle. Lou and Day. We've got great writers. I come from an engineering background. I started after college. I worked for an automaker. Worked for Chrysler on the Jeep Wrangler JL program.
Nice.
So when I went to college, I was like, man, I love to read Motor Trend and Car and Driver. That would be a cool job, right? You get to just talk about cars all the time, write about cars. I loved writing. But I was like, I'm not going to study journalism. The odds of me getting a job at Car and Driver are like just zero, basically. Especially where I was at the time. I was, I did high school in Leavenworth, Kansas, in a military family. I didn't know anybody in the car world. The idea that I'd go from there to become a car journalist seemed like such a stretch that I was like, I'm not going to risk it. I'm going to study engineering.
Yeah.
And that way I can, give myself the best chance of getting in the car world.
Guaranteed.
Pretty much. I mean, if you do a good job studying engineering and you want it. Anyway, I started as an engineer. I was at Chrysler for a few years. So I was working on the JL Wrangler program, which was my favorite. I was a huge Jeep fan. Yeah, I was in the advanced aerothermal team. I was doing cooling system development for the Wrangler for all the engines, the diesel and all that.
Yeah.
And it was fun. And that was something that did it for a couple years, but I really wanted to go back into the creative world. Yeah. The real reason why I, left that engineering world is I still kind of had that nagging interest in becoming a car journalist.
Okay.
And also, when you work in the auto industry in Detroit, you work for a big automaker, you think that everyone there loves cars. But actually, it's like the minority of people. Like, you work at Chrysler, right? You're on the Jeep program. You got people working on Dodges, Rams, Vipers, all this. You're like, everyone here must be a diehard.
Yeah.
We're in Detroit. It's the Motor City. That's just locals who need jobs for the most part. And there are some diehards, but so I worked there for a few years, and I just wanted to be in an environment where I was surrounded by obsessed car people every day.
I mean, Detroit, we're talking Chrysler. It doesn't get much more car than Detroit and Chrysler.
I mean, you would think.
Yeah.
And there were enthusiasts there, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't the majority. And I just wanted that. I just wanted to be surrounded by people. We got to talk about it. Not just enthusiasts, but like people. I wanted to talk about the industry in general. Because when you're working for one automaker, you're focused on one model.
Yeah.
Or maybe a couple of models, or maybe a couple of models and their competitive set. So, you know, if I'm working on the Wrangler, I might see what Toyota's doing with the 4Runner.
Yeah.
We might drive them and see what, you know, what interesting solutions they
Stay
have.
competitive.
Right. But if you really love the car world, the broad car world, then you want to just talk about all sorts of cars and not just. Yeah. So for me, I was like, okay, I want to become a car journalist, and I ended up being in college. My next door neighbor was Matt Hardigree, who was the editor in chief of Jalopnik, and he and I became friends, and then worked at Chrysler, and then he hit me up and he was like, hey, if you want to come to Jalopnik and write for us for a bit, let's do it. And so
here you are.
So then I wrote for Jalopnik for 6 years. Started the Autopian in 2022.
Okay. So if any of our fans or our viewers right now can get to you or your website, what would they expect to see at the Autopian?
Well, for one, the takedown on that CNN anti-manual piece. I mean, that's number one.
Yeah.
All sorts of stuff. So we have we pride ourselves in having experts write things.
Yes.
There are too many people on the internet who don't know what they're talking about. For example, Hubert Mies is a suspension engineer, and he writes for us. He designed the suspension for the Tesla Model S and the Ford GT, the 2005 model.
Nice.
So he knows the suspensions.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes you'll have a bit of news come out like, hey, you know, the new Ford Ranger has a Watts-Link rear suspension. It's like, all right, well, Hubert, can you tell us what that means?
What does that mean, right?
Yeah.
So for the average, person or even a newcomer into the automotive world,
Why should I care?
Why should I care? What value does that give me in my drive, right?
Yeah.
And so what you're saying is you've got a team of journalists that have experience. So that means they know what they're talking about and they know what points to get across to the reader.
I mean, the big thing is our team is enthusiasts. And, we have some, regular freelance writers. We have a designer, Adrian Clark, who used to, design cars for Jaguar Land Rover. So, expertise we value. But, on our site, it's just anything that an enthusiast would want to see. Car reviews, news, hot takes. I wrote a take on, I wrote this take that people really hated. Sometimes you write them, they're hit or miss.
Yeah.
My take was that vehicles that have timing belt engines. So the take was that if your car has a timing belt in it, I'm not going to consider it reliable. So it's a crazy take because the most reliable cars, according to most people, are cars with timing belts like the Lexus LS and the Land Cruiser 100 series. But my take was if you have to tear into your engine every 90,000 miles and spend $1,500 to change a timing belt, is that reliable compared to one that has a timing chain that lasts forever? Anyway, key to our site's kind of allure is that it's meant for the every person. We write it in a way that is silly and irreverent. We are not, I don't know. I used to read publications growing up, and sometimes I thought, I think this writer maybe sees themselves as smarter than I am. And you never want to feel that way as a reader. You never want that.
Yeah.
You want them to feel like just someone you're talking with. It's a conversation.
That's right.
So we have an irreverent site that just we cover it's our tone, but it's also our content. As an example, we're on the JC Whitney podcast. So we wrote my colleague Jason Torchinsky, co-founder, wrote a great story about what he's found in JC Whitney catalogs. And it's some bonkers stuff, by the way. I have a little list here. Here's the list. This is just a small piece because there's some crazy stuff in the catalog. There are pipe organ speaker covers. So you would put what looks like a pipe organ over top of your speaker grill. It would look like you're in church. It's the weirdest thing. There were headlight wipers, but not just like the ones you'd see on Saabs or Land Rovers.
Yeah.
They were like a fan blade that spins and like you put it over the it's crazy. But back then it was sealed beam headlights. So
so that made
glass
sense.
round.
Yeah.
Still absurd.
Yeah.
There was also a coach light, which kind of looks like a a light you would see on like a street light, but you'd put it on top of your car. It's not clear why. Fake Rolls-Royce grills were hot for Volkswagen Beetles. If you wanted if you wanted to impress someone with your Beetle, throw a Rolls-Royce grill on that.
I mean, Volkswagens didn't really change, especially the Beetles. They didn't change for like 15, 20 years heavily. So if you wanted to modify it,
there was lots you could do. Yeah. But a Rolls-Royce grill on a Beetle, absurd. But I love that it was an option.
It's so gaudy.
This is actually cloud soft fur-like auto carpets. I just like the way they describe that. That's cloud soft fur-like. Probably my favorite of them all, though. The left foot accelerator. That it linked the accelerator pedal on the right with a rod to create another pedal on the left.
Okay.
So that you could accelerate with your left foot, which probably has some use.
There's some merit in that, I feel like. Yeah.
Anyway, there's all sorts of stuff. There's a speaker that looks like a tachometer in case you want to
add a gauge
'cause it's sporty or whatever, but it's really a speaker. Terry cloth seat covers. And on and on. J.C. Whitney, legendary catalog. Yeah. If you're a car enthusiast, even I'm 32, and I've owned a few old Willys Jeeps. I owned a 1948 Willys Jeep. I now own a 42 Ford GPW World War II Jeep. And like, there are parts that if you do research on these cars, you will see just cool accessories and parts that were available in that. And they're often very bonkers, but that's what I love about it.
Yeah, that's okay. That's the fun part, right? It's like if you don't have options or you don't have access or you don't see what the possibilities are, how can you make something unique to yourself?
Yeah.
Right? And now I do remember you mentioning enthusiasts going to your website and gathering information from other enthusiasts. So I'm going to imagine that you're an enthusiast as well. Do you have any side projects or enthusiastic missions in the automotive world?
Oh, yeah. If we're talking about projects,
yes.
So I just moved to LA. Well, it was about a year ago from Detroit. And Detroit, the lifestyle, Detroit to LA, it's like I'm in a freaking different planet.
Yeah.
I had 14 cars at one point in Detroit. I was renting a small 2-bedroom house with a half an acre backyard for $835 a month.
That's amazing.
Now imagine you're a young dude, you write for a huge car website, jalopnik at the time. Rent is cheap, everything's cheap. And every time you write about buying a car, it gets lots of readership and lots of engagement. You're going to buy a ton of cars, and you're going to buy the weirdest ones, the worst, the rustiest ones.
Yeah.
So I ended up with 14 cars at one point, and they were like, one was a $500 postal Jeep. I had to weld a 2-foot section of its frame with a $100 Harbor Freight welder. One was an $800 Jeep Grand Wagoneer that I dug out of someone's backyard. It was buried. It was buried for like a decade.
Oh my goodness!
It wasn't completely buried, but you know what I mean.
Wheels and all that.
Yeah. I had an old Chevy Tracker. Actually, I own a car in Germany right now. It's a diesel manual Chrysler minivan.
What?
They made turbo diesel minivans in Germany. I bought a car in Australia last year, so I'm always buying cars, always looking for new projects. I like the challenge.
What's your challenge right now? Do you have an automotive
at this moment? So project? I recently bought like 3 cars in the last like few months. So one was a 1942 Ford GPW World War II Jeep.
Yep.
I bought it for $85.
You get out of here.
So if you're listening to this podcast and you're thinking, am I listening to a podcast from 1960?
Yeah.
Because it's always the old timers who tell you the stories about, hey, I once bought a car for $35 and a bag of chips. Those old stories.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you don't hear $85 cars. No. That's not real.
Yeah, that's not real.
But someone on a forum was just like, hey, I got this car, just want it gone. I paid $85 to tow it here. I just want that money back.
Yeah.
So I paid $85. Went down to San Diego, picked it up. It's a World War II Jeep.
Yeah.
It has an engine, transmission, full drive line. Doesn't run. The engine's all messed up. But anyway, so I bought this car alongside a Nissan Leaf, a 2011 Nissan Leaf. So this was kind of Nissan was early to the EV game.
Yeah.
2011, that's the first model year of the Leaf.
Mm-hmm.
And they were not amazing cars. This was like the beginning of like the modern sort of high-range lithium-ion battery EVs.
Okay.
This was before the Tesla Model S even. So this was, I bought it for $2,000 because the battery is toast.
No, it doesn't hold any charge or anything like that.
Air-cooled batteries, they're known to be bad. So mine will go like 23 miles, and then it runs out. That's
on a full charge?
On a full charge.
Woo.
So the battery capacity now is like 7 kilowatt hours. Like there's not a lot left.
Nothing.
So the plan is to electrify the World War II Jeep using the Nissan Leaf parts, because the Nissan Leaf was $2,000. Power companies in California will give you rebates. They're going to give me $1,000. So it'll be $1,000 for the Leaf, $85 for the World War II Jeep. I'm only $1,085 into it, and if I can sell the Leaf body after I pilfer all its parts, I can, this could be a pretty cheap project, but I'm gonna need to find some new batteries. So that's one thing I'm working on right now.
Yeah, okay, I like that one. That's cool.
My favorite project right now is a 1994 Jeep Grand Cherokee 5-speed manual, one of 1,400 ever made. So the Grand Cherokee was the successor to the boxy Jeep Cherokee XJ that everybody seems to love,
Yeah.
And I love it too. That was my first car, an XJ Cherokee.
Yeah.
In 1992, for the 1993 model year, Jeep offered what was supposed to be the successor called the Grand Cherokee. It was a little bit bigger, had a coil-sprung rear suspension, so it rode better, had more articulation. Pretty much every way, it was an improvement, except they decided, for whatever reason, to get rid of the Aisin automatic transmission that was unkillable. That's a transmission you might find in lots of Toyotas.
Okay.
Japanese company.
Aisin.
Aisin, yeah. That transmission was really stout, but they got rid of it for the Grand Cherokee. They put a Chrysler-built one in it, and they were terrible.
Yeah.
So the reason why one of the I think main reasons why the Grand Cherokee is unloved compared to the Cherokee is it has an unreliable transmission. Unless you can find one of 1,400 built in 1993 and 1994 with a stick shift, which I found.
You did, yeah.
So I'm currently building that up on a budget.
So, David, do you have a moment, a very memorable moment or experience in an automotive or an auto?
My dad bought a Jeep Grand Cherokee, and my 5 brothers and I had nothing but time. We had a Jeep, nothing but time, and we had a really muddy Missouri River floodplain.
That's cool.
And we just loved that Jeep. And when you're off-roading, in a way, you're kind of cheering on the vehicle. You're like, what can this thing do? Can it make it over this obstacle? Look at this mud pit. There's no way. There's no way. It's outmatched.
Oh my!
And then you could just go through it, pedal down, and when it does it, that pride you feel in that vehicle it feels like your team winning in a way.
I can almost imagine more pride doing that in a project vehicle.
Oh yeah. When it's
my.
your own, it's more so, it's more valuable than, the Hummer and the Army Hummer. You expect
that's designed,
but still, the
Yeah.
Humvee experience was like, wow, this is cool, and you can do it with people, and it's just a fun thing where you're just with people, just marveling at a vehicle and what it can do. It brings some similar joy that like a great hike would, because you're outdoors.
Yeah.
So it's that really set the trajectory for me. I was like, all right, I want to work for Jeep, and even now as a journalist, no longer at Jeep, I specialize in off-road coverage. And
how full circle is that? I mean, you worked for Jeep, but your first experience in the off-world kind of world is your dad taking you out in a Humvee and getting it stuck. But a Humvee is really just...
It is the successor to the Jeep. It is.
Yeah.
The first military non-horse powered vehicle was... well, that's not true. Not the first. But the World War II Jeep is really the one that started
the iconic one in my mind.
It started it all. And the crazy thing is to experience the Humvee thing at a military base in Germany, and then to work on the Jeep Wrangler engineering team, and then to be a journalist. And whenever that car launched in 2018, the brand new Wrangler is coming out 2018, they send invites out to journalists to be the very first to drive it and review it. And I get to be the first to drive the Jeep that I helped engineer, and I get to write the first reviews. And it was just like, I'm like driving this car that I was like, I saw this in CAD on a computer, 2 years ago. This thing was just an idea, 4 years ago. To be driving it, right next to me is my old boss, who's the chief engineer. He sat right next to me. He hired me into the company, and he's representing the company. He's like, "Yo, this is it. This is it's here. It's physical."
Yeah.
And for it to actually be really dope, like it would have sucked, if I gone to review it. I'm like, man, we really screwed this one up.
We didn't do this good.
But it was great. So I mean, that was full circle for sure.
Oh my.
Yeah.
David, thank you so much for coming here.
Thank you, Angel.
Yes, sir.